we go. All right, let's go. Hi, I'm Paula Romali, an organizer at A Good Local Life, which is a new online community newsletter and directory for residents in the general Lake Minnetonka area and western suburbs. It's designed by and for thoughtful, progressive-leaning folks who believe in Paul Wellstone's maxim that we all do better when we all do better. So volunteers share information and tips for a good local life that aims toward that goal. We cover topics ranging from sustainable gardening and social justice to swimsuits and lots in between, including conversations with local candidates like this one. And this is the first one, and we hope to do more. You can check out the links to A Good Local Life in the chat box. So with that, I would like to introduce Ann Johnson-Stewart. Welcome, Ann.
Hi, thank you very much.
Yeah, Ann is the candidate for the Minnesota State Senate in District 44. She has received the official endorsement of the DFL party and a number of other organizations. You are a civil and environmental engineer by training and profession, is that right?
Yes.
And you are a business owner with 26 employees that has done work on major transportation and other projects in the area. And you also teach at the University of Minnesota.
That's correct, all of it, yep.
Okay, and I also have that you are a mom, a stepmom, and a grandmother who has long been involved in community volunteer work and issues. And I also know that you are an avid gardener who likes to plan and plant pollinator habitats.
How did you know that? Oh, I told you that.
That's right, right.
I know, and actually I'm up to 5 monarch caterpillars already, and I have to stop at 10 because that's a new recommendation. So anyway. Okay,
great. Well, welcome. And like I said, before we dive deeper into your background and priorities as a candidate, I thought we'd set the stage and talk for just a few moments about Senate District 44 and the state Senate in general. So first, tell us, what is Senate District 44? What areas does it cover?
So Senate District 44 is most of Plymouth. There's just a very few blocks east of 169 that are not in our district. It's most of Plymouth, the northern half of Minnetonka, and that's not like divided exactly half. It's the portion of Minnetonka which is roughly north of Highway 7, and it's all of the city of Woodland. There's about 58,000 residents. Well, I should say 58,000 voters, I'm sorry. And it has a pretty diverse background. You'd be surprised to know that 16% of the residents that are of voting age are immigrants. We have a very, very high level of education, at least, geez, I should have printed this out, but this is by memory. So I want to say that 60% of our residents have a bachelor's degree or higher.
Wow.
But the really shocking part, that's not shocking, but the real outlier is that 30% of our residents that are voting age have a professional or a master's degree or higher. So that's highly unusual. So our district is obviously well educated, diverse in background. It's divided between the A side and the B side. So we have Patty Acom, who represents you and me in Minnetonka and Woodland, and then we have Ginny Cleavorn, who represents the northern part of Plymouth. So we have 2 women who are representatives, and they're both Democrats. So our current senator is Paul Anderson, and he's a Republican. On the second day of Senate, of legislative session, he said he wasn't going to run again. So here we are with an open seat.
Right, right. So yeah, and speaking of that, like a lot of us I know keep up on national politics, but not so much on state and local politics.
Right.
So we do have kind of a wrinkle in this race with Anderson deciding not to run. Can you maybe talk about what's at stake then, both in our district and maybe in Minnesota and at the legislature more broadly and for the state?
Yeah, so I initially got interested in running. I was at a Women Winning event last June. Women Winning is an organization that promotes pro-choice women, both Democrat and Republicans. into all sorts of elected offices. And just like you, I didn't really know who my senator was. Terry Bonoff had been the senator here for, I think, 3 or 4 terms. She was quite middle of the road and quite well liked, but she ran against Eric Paulson for national office in 2016, and Paul Anderson won a very, very close race against Deb Calvert. Anyway, I had not been very much paying attention. Obviously, I'm a strong Democrat. I voted for Deb Calvert, but really was more focused on national politics. So in June, I was at this Women Winning event. The speaker was talking about how Minnesota is the only legislature in the nation where we have a Democratic House and a Republican Senate, or vice versa. Every other legislature has both Democrats or both Republicans, and how difficult it was for anything to really happen in Minnesota because of that division. And so my friend Lou was sitting with me. We got out our cell phones. We're like, I wonder who our senator is. And we found out that we had a very conservative Republican as our senator. And that's when I started to just investigate what it would take to support somebody else to run. And over the next few months, I was talked into running myself. So when I decided to run back in August, September, I actually thought I would be up against an incumbent senator. The reason it's so important to me is because with a Senate that's controlled by the Republicans, we're not really getting much movement on some progressive issues that I care deeply about, specifically common sense gun reform, things like universal background checks or the passage of red flag laws. We have a very low number of pro-choice senators. I'm a very strong advocate of choice and reproductive freedom for both men and women. So it's really important to me that the Senate be controlled by the Democrats so that we can move forward on some of these more progressive issues. They only have a 2-seat majority right now, the Republicans do. So my seat seemed like an area that I could make a big difference.
So basically, if you were to win, plus 2 other Democratic seats were gained in the Senate, then the DFL would gain control of the Senate.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, we only have to flip 2 seats.
2 seats.
So they have a very narrow majority. So I think that's one reason that the DFL got very excited when I said I wanted to run all the way back last summer. I'm an engineer, as you said in your intro, and so I treated this like a project. So early on, I started gathering data and figuring out like a structure and what do I need. And that helps so much because you know, I've gone through a few opponents now. So when Paul Anderson decided not to run, I just kept building and building. And then I had a candidate who came in for a while and she left. And now I have a pretty well-placed Republican candidate. But I think my structure and my campaign is very robust and very strong because I've been doing it for so long that I was really embraced by the Democrats, and they've really been, you know, providing me with support. I feel like I was in a good position from the start.
Right. So speaking of your campaign, I was looking at your campaign website, and there are 8 issues that you focus on as areas or planks in your campaign platform and what you would like to do as a senator. And I'm just going to tick them off quickly, and then maybe we can circle back around and talk about a couple of them in more detail. Yep. So you've identified climate, infrastructure and transportation, gun violence prevention and reforms, police and justice reforms, healthcare, education, workforce development, and program and services for disabled people. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about gun violence and reforms in that area, because I noticed that for you, it seems like it was one of the foundational or things that really set you to run. Is that correct?
Yep, I have 2 videos on my website where I talk about the 2 things that really pushed me over the edge. And both of them share the same type of response by the American public. Huge catastrophic events happened, one relating to gun violence. I mean, we've seen time and time again mass shootings happening at schools or other places. And my expectation has been that this will motivate people to really find their way towards some common sense gun legislation. When Sandy Hook happened, and even after seeing 26 children and their teachers getting killed, and yet we still didn't see any movement on common sense gun reform, I was absolutely dumbstruck about that. I started to really put my financial weight behind some organizations that were doing things around the country. I started to get more educated about those things. And frankly, that's what finally pushed me into running in District 44. I was really being pushed to run. The person who ran last time, Deb Calvert, she couldn't run again. She had some employment limit. She'd started a new job. So a lot of people were saying, you should run, you should run, you should run. And I just really, at this point in my life, it wasn't anything that I felt like I was wanting to do. I have a successful business. I love teaching at the university. But in August, there was 2 mass shootings on the same day. I have many students who I love dearly. I have college-age daughters. I have grandchildren who are little babies. And the next morning, I was just crying and realized somebody has to step forward and we have to pass some gun legislation. And I said to my husband, I have to run for Senate. And that was like a moment where I just jumped off the cliff, and I never felt like it was a misstep. I was like, here I am. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do some things in Minnesota, and I hope that we can be a model for the rest of the nation and we can make some progress. I think people are sick of gun control being pushed under the rug. I just said gun control. We're not even supposed to say that, right? We're supposed to say reducing gun violence. Well, we have guns in our house. I have a family of hunters. They all are right behind me saying this has to change. We have to put some limits on what people are allowed to do.
And what specifically are you interested in seeing happen in the state legislature should you become senator?
So there's 2 very teeny tiny little efforts that have not had any forward movement in the Senate because of our Republican control. Paul Gazelka won't even hear these bills. And one is universal background checks. So in Minnesota, if my husband decides to sell one of his shotguns to a neighbor or some guy on Craigslist, there's no requirement that there be a background check for that. Now, if he buys it at a gun shop, then there is a background check. And my husband, by the way, has bought all of his guns at what used to, how come I can't think of it? Anyway, a gun shop, a local gun shop, went through the whole process. Pardon?
The Frontiersman?
The one in St. Louis Park.
Yes, the Frontiersman. That's, you know who owns that? Or used to own that? My dad's best friend from childhood. So I don't
think guns are bad. I'm from a hunting family.
Yeah.
I think guns in the wrong hand are bad. Right. I have, well, we'll talk about the veterans who work for me later. I've talked to my veteran employees many, many times about guns, and there's a place for them, right?
Right.
So anyway, so the first thing I would make sure that we pass is universal background check, so that's actually good for people. If my husband sells a gun and he does a background check on, Joe Blow from Craigslist, and he finds out, the background check comes back clean, Joe Blow goes and uses my husband's sold gun to kill somebody, Jeff has done due diligence, right? He said that he did a background check on him. So I think that's good for everybody, and there's no reason that we can't do that. Then the second thing I want to do is enact something called the red flag laws, which other states have been doing. Again, this is just small movement towards addressing the issue of mental health and how some people just frankly should not own guns. I know it sounds, red flag sets up a lot of red flags, but really it's very, very controlled. If I decided I don't want my husband to go hunting anymore, I can't just call the sheriff and say, oh, my husband shouldn't have a gun. There's investigation. There has to be some background on it. It's really
well. Process.
Yeah, absolutely. As there is. You know, we don't live in a crazy lunatic society. I mean, obviously, if I'm going to propose legislation to move away from gun violence, it's going to make sense. It's going to be
Right.
something that I can look at my brothers at Thanksgiving and they can say, good for you, Ann. You know, I mean, we all report to our neighbors and people want common sense gun reform. Now, once those two very starting kind of minimal efforts get passed, then we'll start to look at other things. But I think as a very basic level, those are two things I would do right away.
Okay. And what about what are your feelings on semi-automatic and automatic weapons?
So I mentioned earlier that I have several veterans who work for me. Right now, I am learning about guns like you can't believe. So I have asked my employees, some of whom own semi-automatics and automatics, to educate me about how they work and what a clip is and what's a magazine. And we're working through that. It's a lot.
Hmm.
I had somebody ask me what's an assault rifle, because I use that in one of my videos. I gathered all my staff together, most of them are men because we're in highway construction. I said, okay, let's agree on a description. What is an assault rifle? And we agreed very quickly. An assault rifle is a rifle that's used to assault a human. Okay, I don't think we should have assault rifles. I think we should have shotguns that are used for deer hunting and other guns, and that are used for squirrels or whatever, and that if you buy a gun for the express purpose of assaulting somebody and it happens to have a many round magazine on it, I think that's common sense, something I don't want. I don't want a shooter to be able to, you know, shoot 30 rounds before a police can get through the door.
Okay.
Lots of people say, well, they could do the same thing with a knife. And I say, I really don't think they could. So
Yeah.
I think there's some common sense here. So I can't really answer your question because I'm not educated about that yet, but I am working on
Working on
it.
it.
I think the issue of semi-automatic and automatic is more complicated. You know, my brothers tell me my dad had a semi-automatic hunting rifle, so I need to figure out what that language means so that's one thing I want to do when I'm a senator. I want to be the teacher of people. I've taught at the university for 20 years. And I want to say, hey, Paula, you know what the difference is? I never knew this before. And then I tell you, and you're like, oh, then we shouldn't use that language. We should use, I mean, I don't know what it is yet,
Right.
but
Right.
I'm going to get there.
Okay. Great. Um, Next, I wanted to turn to transportation infrastructure since that's your big area of expertise. You have a 20-year-old firm that you've
So
had
my
for.
engineering firm is 25 years old this year. We have 27 people.
Congratulations. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks. So you
Okay.
want me to talk about that?
Yeah, what are your ideas for that? What would you like to see happen? What isn't happening? What should be happening? And I'm especially interested in the integration aspect of integrating both, kind of a strategy for both roads and bridges, but also public transit.
Absolutely. Yep. So last spring, I was at a meeting. My husband got inducted into the as an ASCE. I think this is ASCE, American
Woohoo!
Society of Civil Engineers. He got inducted as a lifetime member. So we were at this meeting and they handed out this brochure. It talks about the report card. Oh, you can see it, Minnesota's
Yeah.
infrastructure report card, where the American Society of Civil Engineers state by state by state rated their infrastructure. So in Minnesota, I was just talking to, it's not like I have this out all the time, so don't think I'm weird or anything, but like in Minnesota, our roads are rated at D+. Now I'm a pavement engineer. I have a master's in pavement engineering, so that was no surprise to me. Our pavements are in very bad condition. Here in Minnesota, we have a really harsh environment for both concrete and bitumen or blacktop pavement. So I know this isn't about integration, but at a very base level, one thing I want to be in the Senate is an advocate for our infrastructure. The current bonding bill, for example, has $300 million set aside for water improvements. Everybody has heard about the lack of clean water in places like Flint, Michigan, but it's actually a pretty common issue around the nation. You know, I used to live in Mac Groveland neighborhood. My house was built in 1920. I'm pretty sure the pipes were lead. And you live in an old house too. I think
Yeah.
you said you grew up there. Who knows what the connector pipe is from your home to the main, or what your internal pipes are. $300 million in the bonding bill was to aid homeowners and city water systems to upgrade and to make their drinking water safe. I think that's a core value everybody can agree on. The bonding bill has not been passed though, so it's sitting in the legislature where the Senate and the House can't agree on it. Our bridges, actually, after the 35W bridge fell down, MnDOT, Minnesota DOT, and other state DOTs around the nation were required by the federal government to assess all of their bridges. Now, keep in mind, most of the bridges in Minnesota are publicly owned, but there's a few private owned ones too. So public owned bridges had to be assessed for what we learned at the time was called if they were fracture critical.
Okay.
In other words, if one member broke, like what happened on the 35W bridge, the whole bridge would fall down. So after the bridge fell down, we actually did see quite a bit of improvement in our bridges. Although right now the bonding bill has $50 million in it just for one bridge in St. Paul. So I would love to see the state address some of our just basic maintenance and rehabilitation issues on our infrastructure. If our sewers start breaking, we're deep shit. We're in deep shit, literally, right? Sorry I swore, but we are. I'm a huge transit advocate. My company has worked on all three major transit lines, the Hiawatha line, the Green Line down Central Corridor, and we're now really active in Southwest LRT. I've also worked on bus rapid transit, which is what you see down Snelling Avenue, and what they're building now out to White Bear Lake. That's the Rush line. There's a few bus rapid transit lines connecting downtown St. Paul to White Bear Lake and Woodbury. Bus rapid transit is supposed to mimic light rail transit with buses. So if you ever took it on Snelling Avenue, the buses behave more like a train, but they're a bus, so you don't need the infrastructure for the train. I think transit is critical for workforce development, is critical for affordable housing, is critical for the environment, it's critical for, it's just such a core need for a community. Minneapolis, St. Paul didn't get, well, ironically, we actually did have streetcars at one time, but
that came out to our area.
Yeah.
To Minnetonka.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be, I participated in some of those studies back in the 80s to just revive the streetcar system. And, they're thinking of doing that on 7th Street down from St. Paul to the airport. Anyway, I could talk forever on this, but just so you know, I'm a huge advocate of transit and of getting people out of their cars. One thing that I am 100% sure of, without any data to prove it, is that after the COVID pandemic is over, people are going to say, not so fast. I think I did my job just fine from home. And employers are going to have to, now they're going to have to be the ones that prove that their employees have to come back to work in order to be effective. Whereas I think inversely, before COVID, I was just talking to my stepdaughter about this today. She wanted to work from home for years. She has 3 children, and her boss was like, well, you can't do it. We just don't have the ability. And now she's been doing it for months. So
right.
I think that's an important thing. I think thinking creatively. Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen after that, what the, post-COVID landscape is going to look like for all of this either.
Right. And I think if people stay out of their cars, I think we're going to see a positive impact on the environment and on wear and tear on our roads and other things. So,
yeah, great. Anyway. Well, speaking of the environment, that's one of your other big issues. And you have several planks on that. That's very interesting. You talk about the DFL caucus legislation that you're in favor of. And solar incentives, solar installation incentives, and also fossil fuel divestment. So yeah, why don't you dig into those for me?
So I think to say that somebody believes in climate change is, I think that language has kind of been stolen and used in the wrong way. I think we have to believe in climate change just like we believe in air and we believe in water and we believe in our human bodies. It is real. There's just absolutely, in my opinion, there's no denying that it's happening. I am passionate about the environment. My first degree is in environmental engineering, and then I have my master's in construction or in pavement engineering. But there is much we can do to turn back the damage that as humans we've done to the environment. And if we don't do it soon, there's no turning back. So right now we're at a position that we we've screwed around for decades, and now we need to really enact some legislation and do some things at a national level. And if we can't do them at a national level, we need to do them at a state and local level. My husband and I just put 36 solar panels on our roof. And I know it's just us and it's just one teeny tiny little drop in the bucket, but if we can enact some core values in Minnesota that allow 30% of our homeowners to put solar panels or to somehow invest in solar gardens, now that can really make a big difference.
Yeah.
If we can continue to expand the network of roads that MnDOT has invested in that allow people to buy electric cars and they can safely drive to Alexandria and Fargo and Duluth, knowing that they're going to be able to stop at a wayside and plug in and recharge, then people will feel like they can really start to switch to electric cars. The thing, I was just interviewed by the Sierra Club and they asked me about environmental justice. And I want to be clear, when my husband and I put the array on our roof, we've lived in the same house for 25 years. This house has been paid off for a while. So for us to invest, I think it was $32,000 or something it was $36,000. It's about $1,000 a panel. In our house, we were able to do that because we don't have a house payment. We pay property tax, and we also received pretty heavy incentives from the federal and the state government, which had started to go down at the end of last year. So we rushed to get it done in 2019, and now some of those rebates and stuff are going away.
Right.
We have to make it affordable. So if somebody has a value that they want solar energy or they want solar thermal or something like that, I think we need to say as a society, we're willing to subsidize that. And for the greater good, we're willing to pay so much money so that you don't have to live in a certain neighborhood to be able to afford solar. You can do it everywhere. The challenge is there's a lot of people who rent their homes, so of course they're not going to be able to make those improvements, but I think we can figure it out. One thing I want to do is work with Patty Acom, who's our representative.
Right.
She had an idea that didn't get very far at the legislature called Solar in the Schools, where we would provide millions of dollars for little podunk schools all around the state to install solar on top of them. And I think from an education perspective, that's so fantastic. The kids can learn about solar. The parents can learn about solar. My husband, I don't have the app. My husband's obsessed with it. He can look at how many kilowatts we're producing and how many trees we're saving. And, can you imagine the fun that is, the feeling like you're doing something, but really what it does is it makes solar accessible. So if you live in Benson, Minnesota, you probably aren't really thinking that it's realistic for you to put solar on your roof. But now you see it at the school and you're like, did that. You maybe have an open house one night where the contractor comes and says, oh, heck yeah, you know what? It's no big deal. We can do it for you. Or
Right.
I think that could be a really great thing. I know, and the Republicans shot it down. So I'm going to help her in the Senate with that one.
Oh, great.
Yeah, the Senate or the DFL caucus has proposed carbon-free by 2030, 2050, depending on which of the programs you look at. I think there's a lot of ways that we can get to carbon-free. As an engineer, I know that you can't just say, okay, next week we're going to stop burning coal. That's just not realistic. So there's ways, and many people have thought long and hard about how we get to that, and they have plans. Another thing that I'm trying to wrap my brain around is energy policy, learning where we buy our energy from in Minnesota, learning how much the infrastructure costs, understanding the transfer of energy, and it's not a quick thing. We have two nuclear power plants in Minnesota, and the Sierra Club was really wondering, in my endorsement questionnaire, I said I support keeping them running. And they're like, why would you ever say that? And I said, because they really help us with, nuclear is carbon free. Now you still get the waste, and
Right.
it's not necessarily waste free or safe. Well, I don't want to say it's not safe, but if we're going to switch to something other than carbon fuel, we need those 2 nuclear plants to keep going and to be maintained so
Kind of as a
that
bridge.
yeah, they can help us transition out. It's like
Right.
for me and my husband, if I buy an electric car, well, I can maybe buy 1 electric car. And it's, we actually started looking at them now that we have the solar. There's not, for us, there's no affordable SUV. Well, we are hunters and campers. We need a bigger car. So it's bridging, I just can't pay $70,000 for a car,
Right.
or
Right.
even $50,000 for an SUV. So we're going to keep 1 big car. Yep, it's not optimal for us. It doesn't get great gas mileage, but until we can afford it or the technology catches up, right? Because I think eventually there will be affordable SUV electric cars. Remember when Priuses first came out? They were
Right.
outrageously expensive and you couldn't get them. So
Well, I just
yeah, to
bought,
bridge.
yeah, I know what you're talking about. I actually just bought one and I couldn't afford, I bought a hybrid that's an e-hybrid. So it runs hybrid or it runs electric, a plug-in. And I ended up buying a used one that was a couple of years old because that was the way that we could afford to do it. So I'm right there
Oh,
with you.
I want to talk to you about that. I have a hybrid too, but mine doesn't plug in. It's a RAV4 hybrid, and I need it because I teach all over. So we have to wait for the technology and the infrastructure to catch up. My
But it
husband
is catching
installed.
up.
It is absolutely. My husband installed a plug-in at our cottage in northern Wisconsin because we have a friend with an electric car, and he couldn't really come visit us without stopping in Hinckley and charging and making sure, So,
Right.
we just have to get the infrastructure,
Yep.
and it's going to happen.
Yeah. Awesome. Um, let's see. And you do favor a moratorium and a review of the permit process for mining of copper sulfite and nickel. That's correct?
Yep. So I'm not ashamed of that. I said if the only thing I do in my 2 years as a senator and I get booted out is stop the copper sulfide mining in near the boundary waters, then I've done my job. I just cannot support that. I'm horrified that anyone gave them a permit for that. I'm horrified that we could even think we want copper sulfide mining in an area where the aquifer is so precious. No, I'm not, no.
Yeah.
If they want to use me and say, this engineer says it's not safe, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know of where you speak too, because this is right up your alley in terms of your area of expertise. You know why
Yeah,
this is not a good idea.
Right. I want to say something to this audience. The tailing pond, the spoil pond from the waste for that that mine is the same size as Medicine Lake. It's 100 acres.
Wow.
So if you think about Medicine Lake, that's a big lake. And
Yeah.
can you imagine a lake on the edge of the boundary waters that was filled with sulfuric acid? And it's just insane. And the only thing keeping it from the natural wilderness is an earthen dam. I mean, that's just crazy. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm not shy about that. I hope I'm not naive, but I really think that we can stop that.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I mean, those are the things that I wanted to do deeper dives into. Is there anything else? Well, actually, before that, I wanted to talk about a couple of big issues, obviously, in the last month or 6 weeks. So obviously the pandemic and police and criminal justice reform. Let's talk about, you've talked about reform versus defunding in terms of police reforming. Can you say something about that and kind of your feelings after the death of George Floyd and what's come after that? What do we need to be doing in SD 44 and more broadly in Minnesota?
Mhm. So I just posted something today that I got from the university because I'm a faculty member. We get these mailers, and it was a really good compilation of materials from an academic perspective on what does defunding mean. So from the start, defunding doesn't mean for me disbanding. I think the police are very important. I think we rely on police for any number of things, but I do think we need to say, what is the value? Where can they be that of value to us? And how much are we willing to spend? My brother had a great analogy. When we hire a construction company to do a city project or a state project, they have to do it a certain way. And if they don't like it, then they don't do work for the state, right? So my brother said, how is that different than the police? If the police want to work for the city of Minnetonka, the city of Minnetonka gets to set the rules. This is how we want you to behave. These are the rules and expectations for us. And if that policeman doesn't want to do that, then he can't work here. So I think we've had, in engineering, we call it scope creep. Scope, like scope mouthwash.
Right.
What happens is over time, things get bigger and bigger and bigger. And somebody needs to just stop and say, whoa, let's stop. What are we doing here? What should we be doing? Should the police, we've heard it all. Should the police really be, spending time getting a cat out of a tree? Should a police really be, how many fender benders have you had? I've lived here a long time, so I've had quite a few. It actually even feels silly to me to call the police and say, I've just been rear-ended, and you don't really know, am I supposed to call the police? So
Right.
I think there's really, this is a good opportunity, and perhaps we should have done it long ago, to say, what role does the police serve? Community by community. We don't have the police in Minnetonka or Woodland. Do you guys even have police? I mean,
I'm Minnetonka,
I don't
so I
know.
don't, yeah.
Yeah, but the role that the police serve in Minnetonka should be based on our core values. What do we want from the police here? And maybe it's different than what the police do in Alexandria or in downtown Minneapolis or whatever. But I think that should come from the community. And right now, I think it's flipped. I think the police in some places have defined their role and said, we need this much money or these Hummers or whatever, these war weapons to
Right.
do our job. And I'm saying, I don't see the need in Minnetonka, but whatever. So
Right.
that's my
So
opinion.
defunding, when you say defunding, I mean, like many people, you're thinking more like reallocation and
Yes,
reconsidering of how
absolutely.
resources are allocated versus, eliminating a police department.
100%. I mean,
Okay.
I love the police. One time I came home, just recently, I came home from the weekend and my front door was open. And I'm like, oh, did I do that? Did somebody, and I have stepkids, maybe they came over. But I called the police. I mean, I think we all need the
Right.
police at many times, when my mom was dying and we were taking care of her, we called the police when she went into arrest. What else are you going to do? So
Right.
I think, yeah, we need police. Absolutely, without a question.
All right.
Then you asked me about the pandemic. Did you want me to talk about that?
Yeah. What's it like? Well, first of all, what's it like to campaign during the pandemic?
It's easy because I don't have to go door knocking, although I wish I could go door knocking.
It's kind of the
So
hardest job that you really love. That's what I
I
found with
love it.
door knocking. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I love phone calling, but I don't have time for it, so it's like, it's very easy. We're not, the Republicans are door knocking. We're not allowed to. And I suppose I could say, well, I could do whatever I want and I could go door knock, but really the DFL is saying it's irresponsible, and I agree. So we are not door knocking. I mean, even when I dropped off lawn signs, I didn't knock or anything. I just
Yeah, you
in and out with
called.
my mask
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it has been a challenge. We're using Zoom a lot. I mean, I feel like, Paula, I've never met you in person, but now I've seen you a few times. I feel like this feels like a conversation. So I think it's an okay alternative to you and me sitting in your living room and having a chat.
Right.
I'm writing a lot of personal letters. I mentioned before I got on here that I wrote that note to that woman that I saw on the line. we're really defaulting back to the old-fashioned notes and postcards and phone calls, and we're seeing how this goes. I really don't believe we're going to be door knocking ever before November, and it feels subdued to me. Doesn't it seem weird? We're not seeing
It's very weird. It is.
we're not seeing massive ads on TV. They're just starting on the internet, and I'm sad. I would like to be meeting more people, but
Yeah.
can't
So
do
what do
it.
you think about how our state is doing? Like, say, fast forward, it's,
Mhm.
your term started, you've been elected, and what do you think? Well, first of all, backing up, how do you think we've done it as a state? What have we done well? What could we be doing better, both in terms of as our government and in
Mhm.
terms of our citizenry?
So I think if you remember, I think I made a video right before St. Patrick's Day. So it was like March 15th, 16th, or 17th, where we just locked down. And remember how weird that was? There was nobody on the streets. You'd go to the grocery store and you'd kind of jump in, run in, and run out. There was nothing on the shelves. And
Right.
I actually, I read 4 papers a day. I don't read all of them, but I mean, I read a lot of newspaper articles. And it seems like around the country, COVID is exploding, depending on the state response. I see it in Minnesota actually for the first time ever. I'm hearing from friends and family that they have COVID, or, it's starting to become closer to our own homes.
Right.
Um, I think that's because, frankly, I think it's because young people are out having fun and seeing each other. And I think it would be a horrible thing to let schools go back in session. Although the university will be in session and I'll be teaching in the fall, um, I think it's a fine line that Governor Walz is walking. He wants to get um, the economy going again, but we also have to be very careful. We don't want what's happening in Florida to happen here. So I think Governor Walz is respected and liked, and I think if he were to shut us down again, I think most people would be okay with it. Now, on purpose, I follow people on Facebook who I don't agree with ideologically, and I think without question, there's people out there who are like, we're done with this. We're gonna
Right.
have a mutiny. We're gonna go to the, whatever. So I don't think it'll be quite as, I don't think people will be quite as obedient as they were in March, but I think people are still hanging around. I know an awful lot of elderly people who are still not going out, not doing anything.
It seems to me
So how about,
the big problem that our state is having, and maybe that's why people are a little bit complacent about it, is because so many of our deaths up to this point in our cases have been in congregate care facilities.
I
So I think
know.
we're actually quite high in that regard. And I don't know if you know anything. I haven't been able to find anything in terms of why we think that is, why it's still so high that, we're 80% or so of our deaths have been in congregate care facilities. I think that may change because people are saying that we are, in a sense, still at the end of phase one in
Yep.
terms of the first wave. So that may well
Mm.
change. But right now, compared to the rest of the country, we have a very high percentage of our cases and deaths in congregate care facilities.
I think, well, this is not founded on any data. This is just my personal opinion. I think because we were so good staying at home and self-quarantining, I think we didn't see a widespread of it in the general community. So, like for my own self, I didn't know anybody who had it. I don't know anybody who was exposed to it. I don't, we didn't really have any incidents of it. And I think in the care communities, or in the nursing homes and care facilities, I think we all know that those homes are very short staffed. I think that the people who work there have to see a lot of people in a day, and perhaps they just, I think there was a learning curve with COVID that people didn't really understand how dangerous and impactful exposure could be. So maybe it was the reality. You have to think the reality of exposure, and then you also have to think about the fact that if I were to get COVID, I mean, I'm not in great shape, but I'm 55, I would expect to recover. If I just lost a friend and mentor who was 85, he did not recover, and he also had it for a long time. So I think over time, if you have COVID in a facility for a long time, that just naturally means more people are going to get exposed to it, and you're going to see more deaths from it. Now,
Yeah.
we work in construction, and from the start, we were deemed essential, and my staff had to wear masks out on the project. We're working on Southwest Light Rail, which has hundreds of construction workers. And only last week, 2 weeks ago, did we have our first case. But now we're hearing it over and over again. An operator has, and not just on Southwest, I don't want to bad talk Southwest, but we're hearing it on all different job sites that one guy has it, or whatever. And we hadn't seen that for the first 3 months. So that's what makes me think that it's going to become more virulent and more commonplace.
Yeah, we might be in for a ride in the next few months, unfortunately, I think. But anyway,
Yeah.
okay, I've kept you a long time, so I want to try to wrap things up.
Yeah, there's 2 people still watching by the time you air this, right?
Well,
Your husband and mine.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to try to do chapters so that people can navigate quickly to different topics. But hopefully,
Okay.
we'll see. We'll see how good my technical skills are in that regard. So, anything in closing? We were going to do a quick lightning round, but before then, any unique strengths that we haven't already talked about that you think that you're going to be able to bring to the table? And then, what most appeals to you about being a state senator?
So I think when you said I'm the perfect candidate, I think it also that I am the perfect candidate. I have worked in highway construction for 35 years. I have been a non-professor at the university for 25 years. And I'm a woman in highway construction. So I have figured out how to make my way. I have figured out how to, I'm not afraid of much. Now, that doesn't mean that when a big, paving contractor screams at me, I don't get a little nervous about that. But I have also learned that somebody screaming at me doesn't kill me. And I have taken a lot of training and have had a lot of experience in negotiating my way through pretty ugly situations. I think that makes me well suited to be a good senator. Another thing that I've done is I don't necessarily come in already having my mind made up about things. So as an engineer, I'm naturally inquisitive, and if I don't understand something, I will ask. Like those semi-automatic guns.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand that language, so I'm asking my employees, who they all own a ton of guns, to show me or explain to me. I employ quite a few veterans, so that's why I have employees who have a lot of guns. And I find that very interesting. So for me to learn about things like, energy policy, or where we get, our energy in Minnesota, or what it would really mean to shut down a pipeline, that's pretty interesting to me. So for those reasons, I think I'm well suited. I think we should have more engineers in the Senate. The reality is that they don't make very much money, so I'm sure that there's engineers going, why would I do that? Plus it's a part-time job. It's very hard to figure it out. But I have a company that I'm ready to kind of transition to new ownership. I can teach in the fall and not in the spring, and I think I can make it work.
Okay.
What am I most excited about? I know it's so cliche to say I'm a real people person, but the part I really think is going to be fun is, and the part I've already enjoyed, I got to go like this, is meeting people like you and meeting other people. I love thinking about all the new people I know in the last year that are super interesting, and I think I will really enjoy meeting both awesome people and kind of weird people. I think expanding my knowledge and circle of humans, I think I will really like that.
Especially once we're out of this COVID thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, actually being able to be in a room with people again is something to look forward to.
I'm just excited to learn how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, well, now we go to a lightning round. So,
Okay.
are you reading, well, do you have a favorite book or a book that you're reading right now?
So right now I'm trying to read David Brooks' The Second Mountain, which is about finding your purpose in life after you've already had. Yeah, you know what though? Then I started getting all these other ones like White Fragility and all these. So my book tray, it's like this tall.
Right.
But I really want to get through David Brooks' book. My favorite book is, I have a couple. Oh, I love Beverly Cleary books. Remember those when you were little? And I love The Secret Life of Bees. I love The Help. I love Nora Ephron. I like to be entertained as I read, so a good story is always fun.
How about TV?
Loved Encyclopedia Brown when I was a little girl. TV?
Yeah.
You know what? I watch
movies.
I watch 2 TV shows a week. Well, one is on Netflix, so I watch CBS Sunday Morning without fail. And that's been the best part about COVID is we don't have to run off to church at 9 o'clock. So I love CBS
I won't tell
Sunday
your
Morning.
pastor.
Yeah, he already knows I'm not, you know, I usually will log in on Facebook and like press the like button every once in a while. I shouldn't tell him that. And then I love Schitt's Creek, or you're not supposed to say that. But that's very fun, and my husband and I are working through that one.
Okay. And favorite music, past or present?
Past, present, future, James Taylor is my favorite. I love the Chicks, which is the Dixie Chicks now they've renamed. I love Lyle Lovett. I love Brandy Carlisle. I kind of like folksy music.
Okay. Hobby or passion?
Well, I am a passionate gardener. I do raise caterpillars, but like I said, I just read an article today that we're not supposed to do that because babying the caterpillars is decreasing their DNA quality. So I can only do 10 a year. I love to garden, and I am passionate about knitting. I love to knit. I like to knit socks.
Okay. And do you have a favorite, one or more favorite places to go in SD44?
Well, my husband and I are pretty boring. We love Maggie's. We love to get their pizza for takeout. You know what? I don't think they're in our district. I think that's in Wayzata. That's in Grudge 33. We love, I love a lot of places. I love Snuffy's. I love People's Organic. I love the Dairy Queen on Highway 5. In fact, I was there today, and I got a dip cone, which is dumb. Don't ever get a dip cone when it's hot because the ice cream melts underneath the chocolate, and then it's, I have like a big ice cream stain on my shirt. I love, I can't think of the name of it, but it's that garden store right on Minnetonka Boulevard.
Tonkadale?
Yeah, I was going to say, not Tonkadale. The
West Side Floral, I think it's called.
No, but it's Tonkadale. That's the one. Oh, I was going to say Tangletown, and that's not it. It's Tonkawood. Yeah, I love that place.
And do you, well, given your gardening penchant, do you have a local sustainability or other sustainability tip in general, given that you're the solar maven and the garden maven?
Well, we have a ton of milkweed, and actually that article I read today said one thing you can do to help the monarchs is don't pull your milkweed. And my husband is such a sweetheart. He doesn't, he lets me have it. So we've lived in this house for 25 years. I'm trying to get to a point where we only have big, huge hydrangea bushes. You know, when I first bought the house, we put in all kinds of perennials, and now it's a mixture of hydrangeas and milkweed. From the curb, it looks fine, but that's one sustainable thing.
Keep your milkweed.
I don't know if I was telling you or my neighbor, but I wrote some books on roadside vegetation because the state actually is a huge owner of land, and there's a butterfly corridor that goes all the way down 35 from here to the ocean at the Gulf of Mexico. So it's really important that we don't use pesticides and we don't kill bees. So I applaud you for putting together a bee garden.
Great. Yeah, I'll follow up with you afterwards about that because I definitely need some tips there. All right. Well, I think that's it. And thanks for this really, I think, insightful conversation. So to learn more about your campaign, I've asked people to go to your website, and it's listed in the chat box. And I think one other thing that I wanted to get your help in reminding people about is voting in the primary. We're not just at the general. We need to vote in our primary election, which is on
Yep.
August 11th, not just for your race, for a number of other local and
Yep.
county and state races. There is a primary on August 11th, and we can vote early or absentee. That is by mail, and we have a link as well in the chat box about requesting your ballot so that you can safely vote by mail, or
Yep.
if it's allowed, going in and casting your vote early.
We are really recommending that. Even I'm telling everybody I talk to, get your absentee ballot now, because if we are in fact in just the first wave of COVID, who knows what could happen in November, and the last thing we want is for people not to vote. So just go to the Secretary of State's website. It takes 3 minutes, not even, and you can request your ballot for both the primary and the general election. When you get your primary ballot, you can send it back in immediately, because open voting is happening right now, and you want to make sure you get that in by August 11th. And then whoever wins the primary will be on the final general election ballot, and those ballots will come out in October.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's it. I want to thank you for
Thank you.
sticking with us tonight and for this great interview. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Paula, I would love to, I feel a little remiss. I should have been asking you questions, but I knew this was the interview. So my